It was supposed to be just a Sunday dinner. But when I walked into my parents' house that evening, I should have known something was off. Everyone was dressed too formally. Even Uncle Mark, who usually showed up in Crocs, had a tie on. And the air, it was thick, like a storm waiting to crack open. Dad stood at the head of the table like a CEO about to fire his lowest performing employee. His jaw was tight. Mom's hands were clasped together, like she was praying for a miracle. And my sister Olivia? She was already smirking. I hadn't even sat down before Dad spoke. "We're here to discuss your failing company," he said, loud and flat, like it was some intervention. Like I was a burden to the brand name they loved more than me. The room froze. I looked around. Every face in my extended family stared at me like I was diseased. Mom leaned forward, her voice dripping with that fake softness she always used before gutting me. "We love you, Rhea. But your pride is hurting this family. It's time we face the truth." Dad didn't even blink. "It's time for a transition. Olivia has business training. She can take over until things stabilize." I blinked slowly. My heart didn't break. It hardened. The audacity. They thought I'd let them walk into my company and hijack it just because a few numbers on a spreadsheet look shaky? "You've been monitoring my business?" I asked, my voice like ice. Dad tossed a folder toward me. "You sent us quarterly updates. We had our accountant look them over." No warning. No conversation. Just a room full of vultures. "I'm your daughter," I said. "Not your employee." Olivia rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." And then it happened. A loud gasp cut through the tension. Olivia had gone pale. She was staring at her phone, jaw wide open. Her hand started shaking. "Wait," she whispered. "Why is your face on Forbes?" The silence was louder than any insult they'd ever thrown at me. Uncle Mark leaned in. "What?" She turned her screen around, her voice cracking. "She's on the Forbes 30 under 30 list in tech. It says, oh my God, it says she runs Nairovia Incorporated." Everyone stared at me, like they were seeing a ghost. A ghost they thought they'd buried. I pulled out my phone and casually placed it on the table. A full-page spread glowed across the screen. "Meet Rhea Cole, the quiet mind behind the AI revolution in medical infrastructure." I leaned back in my chair. "My name is Rhea, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because when your own family tries to bury you alive, nothing tastes sweeter than the sound of their silence when you rise from the grave. What they tried to take over, that wasn't even the real empire. They always made it look like love. But growing up in the Cole household meant learning that love came with terms, conditions, rules. From the moment we could walk, Olivia was the chosen one. She was the daughter who got framed photos on the hallway walls, the one who wore Mom's diamonds to prom, the one Dad introduced proudly at networking events. And me? I was the experiment. "She's different," Mom would say, clutching her pearls whenever I voiced a dream too big. "She's too sensitive," Dad muttered when I cried after being mocked. "She's intense," Olivia smirked whenever I tried to be serious about my future. Every talent I had was met with suspicion. I taught myself to code at 14. Built my first app at 15. But instead of praise, my father said, "You spend too much time alone. It's not healthy." When I won a national science competition, Olivia joked that I'd peaked in high school. The truth was, every time I succeeded, they got quieter. I didn't fit their mold. I wasn't dainty or diplomatic like Olivia. I didn't play tennis or fake smiles at country club brunches. I built things. Systems. Ideas. I questioned rules. I wasn't obedient. I was original. And in our family, originality was treated like a virus. Dad once told me at dinner in front of guests, "Rhea will make a good employee one day, just not a leader. She doesn't have people skills." They laughed. I didn't. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. reverse engineering a biotech app that would later help me land my first investor. But I never told them, because I learned early. In our home, vulnerability was ammunition. I watched Olivia fail upward. She botched internships, got caught cheating on a business ethics paper, and still got accepted into the Ivy League.
Why?
Because Dad made a few calls. When I got into a prestigious tech accelerator on my own merit, they didn't even show up to the pitch night. Mom called me later just to ask if Olivia's new website looked too boring. It was always her. Always Olivia. The golden girl with golden hair and golden lies. And me? I became the shadow. The whisper behind walls. The mistake they hoped would quietly disappear. But every bruise they left on my ego became part of the armor I didn't know I was building. Every door they slammed became a blueprint I studied. And the day Olivia stole my laptop and read through my private journals, I realized something that chilled me to my core. They weren't just dismissing me. They were rooting against me. That's when I stopped hoping they'd change. That's when I stopped wanting their applause. I didn't want their love anymore. I wanted something they could never fake. Respect. And the only way to get it was to disappear and build something they'd never see coming. The year after college was the loneliest year of my life, and also the most powerful. On the outside, it looked like I'd failed. The startup I had launched publicly, the one my dad actually pretended to care about, tanked in under 6 months. Mostly because I let it. Quietly. Strategically. The tech world wrote me off. Overambitious. Another dropout with no follow-through. I saw the headlines and let them circulate. And my parents? Oh, they relished it. Dad told a colleague at a gala, which I wasn't invited to, that I was taking some time off to find herself. Mom called one night and said, "Sweetheart, there's no shame in accepting defeat. Maybe it's time to look into something simpler. You're good with people. Maybe a receptionist role?" Olivia sent me a link to a beginner coding bootcamp with a winking emoji. That was the moment I made a decision. If they were going to pretend I was nothing, I'd build everything right under their noses. I moved into a shoebox apartment on the east side. No elevator. One window. One desk. And I started building Nairovia, Inc. Only a few people even knew the name. I filed it under a friend's LLC. Rented P.O. boxes. Used encrypted servers. I didn't want a paper trail. Not because it was illegal, but because I needed it invisible. I'd seen what happened when my family sniffed opportunity. They didn't nurture it. They claimed it. Then they ruined it. I worked 18-hour days. Survived on vending machine coffee and leftover startup pizza. I pitched hospitals and clinics under pseudonyms, refined my AI models at 3 a.m., rewrote algorithms until my eyes blurred. And slowly, quietly, it began to grow. 1 clinic in Ohio. Then 2 in Texas. Then a hospital chain in Kenya wanted in. Nairovia was helping underfunded hospitals triage patients faster, saving lives and millions in wasted resources. We weren't flashy. We were effective. But to my family, I was still the failure daughter, trying to find herself. And then came the signs. I noticed Olivia asking oddly specific questions. About IP. About patents. She claimed she was just curious. I found Dad's assistant snooping through my LinkedIn network. Mom accidentally called me by Olivia's name on a voicemail. Twice. Then one afternoon, I got an offer from a venture group with suspiciously familiar phrasing. They were trying to buy into a company I never told them about. That's when it hit me. They were watching, tracking, waiting. I stared at the email for 10 full minutes. They weren't just preparing to sabotage me. They were planning to steal what they thought I had. But what they didn't know was that the company they were eyeing, the one they assumed was my only asset, it was bait, a decoy, an entire false startup built just for them. I smiled. For the first time in weeks. They thought they were playing me, but they were already inside my trap. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because the moment I saw their footprints in my digital life, the fake investor email, the sudden interest in my patents, I knew what I had to do. They thought they were clever. But I was raised in their house. I knew how they moved. So I gave them a mirror. I created a fake company, Synthovia Labs. A clean, flashy little shell. Website logos, a few puffed-up client testimonials, and just enough breadcrumbs to make it look real, but unstable. The best part? I made it believable that I was failing. I let a few investor emails leak, delayed fake payroll, posted ambiguous job listings that hinted at desperation. I even had a friend pose as a panicked CFO during a networking event my father attended. Predictably, they took the bait. First, Dad forwarded me a long-winded email. "Ria, I heard Cynthia might be in trouble. We should talk." Then Mom called to check in, after 4 months of silence, to casually mention that Olivia had recently completed a business leadership course. That's when I knew. They were preparing to circle me, like vultures. But I was 10 steps ahead. Behind the scenes, Nairovia was thriving. We'd just closed a major deal with an international health agency. We'd rolled out a beta version of our AI system to 3 hospitals in West Africa. Our server demand was growing so rapidly, I had to onboard 2 new engineers in a single weekend. Yet to my family, I was the same lost girl, sipping expired coffee and dreaming of glory. I let them think I was breaking. I sent Dad vague updates with projected losses. I talked about burn rate and angel investors backing out. I knew the language. I knew what would bait his ego. Olivia called one night with fake sympathy dripping from her voice. "Hey, if you need someone to help manage your mess while you get back on your feet, I'm around. No shame in a little help." I laughed. "Thanks, Liv. I'll think about it." She thought she'd won. They all did. But while they were planning their takeover of Cynthia, I was preparing my debut. You see, Forbes had already interviewed me. They'd done their research, vetted the impact of Nairovia, confirmed my identity, and agreed to feature me in their upcoming 30 Under 30 issue. I just hadn't told anyone yet, not even my closest friends, because I wanted the reveal to burn. I wanted Olivia's voice to crack when she saw it. I wanted my dad to feel that cold panic crawl up his spine. I wanted my mother to look down at her pearls and wonder why they suddenly felt too heavy. And I wanted all of it to happen, not in private, but with an audience. So when my parents invited me to a family meeting to talk about business matters, I accepted. I walked into that house with a calm face, a measured step, and my phone in my jacket pocket, already buzzing from the Forbes article going live. They thought they were staging a public intervention. But I knew the truth. They had just written themselves into my origin story. There's a particular silence that follows a bomb. And in that dining room, after Olivia gasped, after Forbes glowed across her phone screen, that silence hit like an aftershock. No one moved. Dad's hand hovered midair above his scotch glass. Mom's mouth hung open in a frozen half-smile. "Olivia?" She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Correction, she had. The ghost of the sister she buried. They had expected tears. Maybe a plea for help. An emotional breakdown, followed by Olivia sweeping in like the golden savior. Instead, they got Forbes. "Ria, what is this?" Olivia whispered. I didn't answer her. I turned to Dad. "You said we were here to discuss my failing company, right?" He cleared his throat. This must be some kind of mistake." I raised my phone, opened the full article, and let the headline ring out like a war cry across the room. How Ria Cole quietly revolutionized healthcare AI, the woman behind Nairovia Incorporated. I locked eyes with him. "You spent 6 months tracking the wrong company. You thought Cynthia was my legacy? That was the bait, Dad." Mom blinked rapidly, trying to assemble her thoughts. "Why, oh, why wouldn't you tell us?" "Because every time I did," I said, "you try to turn it into something that belonged to you. Or worse, gave it to her." Olivia snapped. "You're being paranoid." "No," I interrupted. "I'm being strategic. Something you'd know more about if you'd earned even one thing in your life." That stung. Her face turned red. "You're making a scene," Mom said, voice sharp now. "No," I said calmly. "You made a scene. You brought the whole family here to watch me fail. You handed my supposed company over to her like I was nothing." Uncle Mark, who had always been neutral, muttered, "Jesus." And then the notification started. My phone buzzed again and again. My inbox flooded. I had gone viral. Articles, shares, investor pings, requests for interviews. Someone at the table whispered, "Is this real?"
Yes, very.
I stood. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't scream or cry. I just said, "I built something you tried to destroy before you even knew it existed. You taught me to hide. But hiding made me sharper. Stronger."
And now?
I looked Olivia square in the face. "Now the world sees me. And no one is looking at you." That was the dagger. 3 hours later, Olivia posted a photo of us from childhood with a desperate caption about how proud she was. The comments didn't buy it. People dug up old quotes from her interviews, where she claimed to be the only entrepreneur in the family. Someone leaked an old video of dad mocking women in tech at a fundraiser. It all spiraled. That night, I got a call from Mom. I let it ring. Then I blocked the number. They weren't calling to celebrate. They were calling because they felt the floor drop out beneath them and needed me to build the ground back. But I wasn't their foundation anymore. I was the earthquake. What they never understood was this. Humiliation in private is one thing. But when the public turns on you, when everyone sees the truth, that's a death by 1,000 cuts. And my family? They were bleeding everywhere. 3 days after the Forbes article, Olivia lost her brand deal with Galleria Skin. They cited integrity concerns. Turns out, someone found tweets where she mocked female coders while trying to take credit for my work. Then came the podcast clip. A tech journalist dug up an old interview from 2 years ago, Olivia bragging about her solo project that was, word for word, one of my early Nairobi pitches. I'd shared it with the family in confidence. The internet didn't just drag her. It burned her at the stake. Hashtags started trending. Hashtag not her code. Hashtag golden sister exposed. She tried to fight back with a tearful video, but it backfired. Every blink looked rehearsed. Every sniffle felt strategic. Then, someone found old audio of Dad from a closed-door business seminar, laughing about how his daughters were a tale of what to do and what not to do. Guess which one I was? A blogger posted it alongside the headline. He built a throne for one daughter, and now watches the other rule the world. Their business partners started pulling out. Banks called. Contracts evaporated. It was a slow unraveling, but they felt every thread snap. Olivia's speaking engagements were canceled. One by one. Sponsors pulled out. Her name, once gold, became a punchline. Mom tried to do damage control by posting old photos of me on her Facebook with long captions like, "We always knew our daughter would shine." But the comments weren't kind. Someone wrote, "You knew? Then why do you only show up now?" Another, "Where were you when she needed support, not spotlights?" They turned off comments after that. Meanwhile, I posted a single photo on Instagram. Me at a hospital in Nairobi, standing beside the head of pediatrics, holding a plaque that read, "Innovation that saves lives." Caption: When they tried to silence me, I built a louder legacy. 2 million likes. CNN picked it up. TEDx called. And then came the cherry on top. A girl messaged me from our old school. She'd been bullied for loving math and building robots. She said, "They told me I was too weird for tech. But you made it out. Maybe I can too." I cried that night. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. My name meant something. And theirs? Well, their name was just a headline now. A cautionary tale. Not the power players. Not the legacy keepers. Just the parents who tried to erase their daughter and ended up forgotten in her shadow. The rise. She builds her own life. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it moves silently, through decisions, through dignity, through walking away without looking back. And that's exactly what I did. While my family choked on the smoke of their own fire, I built something sacred from the ashes. I bought a beach house in Cape Verde under Nairobi's nonprofit branch. A quiet place with open air and no shadows, just sunlight and salt water. Every window faced the ocean. No trophies, no frame degrees, just space to think. I didn't need walls to remind me who I was. I lived it now. Every day. I hired a team of young women from rural schools and underfunded colleges, brilliant minds who were once told they'd never lead. I looked them in the eyes and said, "No one gets to write your story but you. Let's code our future from scratch." And we did. Nairovia expanded into 14 countries. We built emergency response tools for hospitals with limited staff. We partnered with NGOs. We saved lives, quietly, effectively. I launched a scholarship fund named the Invisible Girl Grant, because I knew what it felt like to be brilliant and ignored. Then the invitation started. TEDx, Harvard, the United Nations Health Innovation Summit. But the one that made me pause was from my old high school. They were hosting a Women in STEM event, and they wanted me to keynote. I walked into that school like a storm dressed in calm. Same halls. Same brick walls. But I wasn't the girl who once cried in the janitor's closet after being mocked for trying too hard. I was the woman who proved them all wrong. The principal greeted me with a nervous smile. "Ria, we're so proud of your accomplishments." I shook his hand. "I hope you cut my detention slips. They aged well." The girls in the auditorium watched me like I was fire and sky wrapped into one. I told them the truth, every cracked piece of it. I wasn't born with permission to succeed. I had to carve it out with silence and scars. But if they could bury me, and I could still grow, then so can you. A standing ovation. Some cried. All clapped. And afterward, a little girl hugged me and whispered, "My dad says girls shouldn't do tech. But I like machines." I knelt to her level and whispered back, "Then build one that proves him wrong." That night, I stood barefoot on the beach outside my home. My phone buzzed endlessly from journalists, collaborators, admirers. I didn't answer. I watched the tide roll in and whispered to the wind. I didn't need them to believe in me. I just needed me. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was no longer surviving their rejection. I was thriving in my own acceptance. It had been almost a year since Forbes, a year since the collapse, since the silence from the people who once filled every inch of my childhood home with their noise, their judgments, their expectations. I hadn't seen them, not once,
Until the knock came.
I was barefoot in my living room, the ocean humming outside my open windows. It was a peaceful morning, the kind where healing feels like a sound you can actually hear. Then 3 knocks. Firm. Familiar. Heavy. I didn't need to check the peephole. I knew.
But I looked anyway.
There they were. My parents. Standing side by side on my porch like ghosts from a life I no longer lived. Dad looked smaller. Older. His suit wrinkled. The man who once towered over boardrooms now shifted awkwardly, like a boy outside detention. Mom was holding her purse with both hands, like a shield. Her face was pale, lips pressed into a line. No pearls. No designer scarf. Just silence and shame. I opened the door, but only halfway. "Ria," Mom said, voice fragile. We didn't know where else to go. I said nothing. Dad stepped forward. "We've lost everything. The firm. The house. Olivia moved back in with us. We thought." He stopped. His eyes filled. But I'd seen his eyes lie before. "I thought maybe," he tried again, "you could help us. Just something. A loan. Or a job. Anything." It didn't hit me like I thought it would. No surge of triumph. No swelling pride. Just quiet. I stepped out onto the porch. They flinched, as if expecting rejection with teeth. Instead, I handed my father an envelope. He opened it slowly. Inside, a check. Not for millions. Just enough. Enough to live, to eat, to rebuild modestly. No more. No less. Dad stared at the number, stunned. Mom looked at me like I'd slapped her and saved her in the same breath. "You give us this?" she asked softly. "No," I replied. "I'm not giving it. I'm returning it." She frowned. "All the years you invested in making me feel small? That check is just my way of closing the tab. We're even now." Dad opened his mouth. I raised a hand. I don't hate you. I don't want revenge. I don't need an apology. I looked them both in the eyes. I built this life so I could finally choose who gets to be in it. And I'm choosing peace. But peace doesn't mean access. I stepped back. They stood there, holding the check like it burned. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I simply closed it.
Quietly.
And on the other side, I heard Dad's voice crack. She really did it. I walked back to my window, the breeze brushing through my hair. The ocean rolled in steady and blue, like it always had. I poured myself tea, sat in my silence, smiled, because the girl they ignored, the woman they tried to erase, she no longer needed to be seen. She had seen herself. And in that truth, I had won everything. They tried to bury me, but I wasn't a corpse. I was a seed. And now, they're just part of the soil I grew from.